So, please, tell us more. We're all sitting on the edge of our seats to know what's the next step. So the paperwork's been filed. What happens? What do they do? Is it a hearing? Do they sit in their little chambers again? What sort of time frame are we looking at? And what does this mean to everybody?
Well, the time frame under habeas corpus is instant.
Yes, well...
But they proved out of the High Court that's not the case.
No.
Part of the fun with the High Court application was serving the Commonwealth of Australia.
Yeah, nice.
So we went to Australia House, and Australia House, it's a lovely building, and it's right sort of smack dead in the central part of London.
Yeah.
But it's like Fort Knox. And it's only been that way since the bombing in London.
Ah, yes. Yep.
And in fact, got talking with the security guard there, and he said, listen, this was great. This building was good. People could come in. There were cafes, coffee shops. It was, you could get heaps of stuff for tourism stuff.
Yeah.
And since the bombing, they just shut the whole thing down. So it was a bit sad. And they didn't want to be served. They just kept saying, oh, no, you've got to go to the Foreign Office. And serve the papers there. And it's like, hang on, if I go to the Foreign Office, I'm admitting that Australia's a foreign jurisdiction. Exactly. I said, no, too bad, mate, so sad.
Yeah.
Here's the paperwork, like it or lump it. And he was like, oh, sure. So then he dragged down one of the lawyers from upstairs, and he was looking at the paperwork, just scratching his head, going, oh, well, I can't really, I can't accept this. Too bad. You've been cited, witnessed 1, 2, and the security guard number 3. Yeah, cool. Right. Your name? Yeah. Right. See ya. And walked out. And then they told him the paperwork. So great. So we did that, and so I don't know what happened to the paperwork there, but Cullerton said the next day, the DPP commented that what's with this paperwork that's been filed in the UK?
Yeah. Nice. So they were on the phone. Hey, guys,
what do we do? What do we do? So then we included the Crown into the week later. So we went into the office for the Crown solicitors who take all that paperwork. So that was all good. But then we went, when we got to the Supreme Court, we went into the Supreme Court, sort of sounded the registrar out there. And that was a bit of an experience going into the Supreme Court. But anyway, we won't get into that. But we got out of the Supreme Court thinking, oh, yeah, beauty, we've got to do this thing called a leapfrog. So we then included that into our paperwork and upgraded the affidavit. Now, one of the differences that was stark between Australia and the UK is when it comes to an affidavit, the UK insist only a solicitor can witness an affidavit.
Right,
and I said to when we're in the High Court, we're in the Queen's Bench Division in front of the administration office, and when they were telling us this, and they charge for it, of course.
Oh, of course.
And I said, but what's wrong with the JP? And they sort of looked around at me like I'd just shot somebody. It's sort of like, did you use those words, justice of the peace? I said, yeah, I did actually. So what, is there a JP around? Nothing was said. They just looked away. It's like, how dare you use those words? You've got no choice but to go to a solicitor. And so then it was like, okay, well, is there someone in this office that can sign? Oh, yeah, we can do that for £12. And that's for an affidavit of a certain size.
Yeah.
Every exhibit also attracts a £2 fee.
Oh, my God.
Oh, it's like, wow, hang on. This is money for...
Yeah, I would have been bankrupted years ago if I could pay that for all my paperwork.
Oh, it's like, wow. And then they said, oh, sometimes the office doesn't have anybody in here, so you're better off going and finding a solicitor. There are solicitors that actually advertise that they sign witness affidavits.
Yeah.
So we then had to get online and look for these people, and a lot of the offices... They don't advertise it at all. You've actually got to ring in. And then they just no, we're not interested in that. Basically, it's what, £30. Well, that's that's about
Not
30
worth our
seconds
time.
work.
Yeah.
But we're spending more to. No, we're not interested. So we eventually found this guy in Kensington that signed off, but that was about £30 to £40.
Wow.
Just to get this solicitor's John Doe.
What happened to access to the court shall be free?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I tried that one too. Don't worry. And again, this is like this disease I seem to have all over me. But this is as a consequence of the EU, of course. Yeah. Because the EU has been changing all of their civil procedure rules very slowly. And of course, this is why they've been trying to whittle down the Privy Council. Yeah. And why it now sits in the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court oversee the application we put on last Wednesday in front of a panel. Okay. And they then make an evaluation and then they pass a ruling accordingly. Yeah. So and being a habeas corpus, under their own civil procedure rules and criminal procedure rules, they have to hear it instantly. Well, we're still waiting. Yes. Good thing we're not holding our breath. Yeah, exactly. But we've put the Australian addresses for service. So essentially all we're wanting out of all of this is to get Cullerton in front of the court there. Yes. That's all we're interested in. We're just saying, yes, we can. We've achieved the fact that you can file, and we want Cullerton over there so he can put his case to the Privy Council. And essentially what we'd be saying is we need a caretaker government. When the United Kingdom, the Crown has a responsibility because there's such rampant corruption throughout the Australian system. It is broken 100%. So they need to install a caretaker government, first of all take control of Treasury, and then set about the motion of starting elections, fresh elections, and bringing it back under the Crown. Now, England's in a very sort of tight situation at the moment because pretty much every time I turn the TV on over there when I had a chance to, it's Brexit. Yeah. That's all they're talking. Yeah. It's what's going to happen, and because there's a fight between Ireland and the United Kingdom. Yeah. And the Scots. It's going back to the 17th century. The Civil War's about to crank over. Yeah. But essentially you've got the media, the fake news media over there, are pushing for a deal. Oh, we want a deal. Yeah, we really want a deal. Or let's conduct another referendum. That was just a little bit awkward, that one. But it was too close to call. So we'll just call another referendum. That's what they're really pushing for. Wow. But when they do the polls over there, the polls are clearly saying between 60 and 80%, no deal, it's been done, get out.
Well, it's already been. The will of the people has already been clearly expressed, and they have a duty
to do what the people say.
Exactly.
And this is what the press, and just as we were leaving, they're sort of having to confront that hard fact. Yeah. The 29th of March is the deadline. Yeah. That's it. And when I was about to leave, Theresa May had just gone over to Brussels to try and scrub up another deal. And the Labor Party there are just pushing for another referendum. Yeah. So it's a mess. Yeah, but what we were hoping was that our paperwork was enough to have the lion wake up and go, hang on, here's our opportunity to rebirth the Commonwealth. We can take our focus off the EU and look at Australia and go, look, this is what's happened as a consequence of neglecting our contractual obligation between our colonies and the worst case scenario being Australia. Yeah. And that's what essentially we're looking to do, because we have to provide a remedy
Yes.
You know, the courts, this is bigger than Ben-Hur.
Oh, absolutely.
It has not occurred in the past. There are similar cases in England when I was doing my research there, but it was more criminal charges against parliamentarians and the like. But what has come out of this, hard and fast, and this is in particular in England, no member of Parliament at any time whatsoever can be exposed to any public courts. At all. While he's a member, he or she is a member of Parliament, they cannot, under any circumstances, be exposed to a public court. Why? Because the Parliament is a court.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is what it's very clear here in Australia. Very clear. The Westminster Parliament, to a certain extent, but when they drafted the Australian Constitution, and especially Section 49, they emphasised, especially our Senate, has an incredible power as a High Court of Parliament.
Yeah.
And they sit then, according to whatever numbers they judge, it's up to the House to deal with. They can either sit, the whole of the House can sit in judgment, or they can combine both houses. If the issue is big enough.
Yeah.
And that's what they've been whittling away. And, of course, this is where this Court of Disputed Returns here in Australia has been raised up in total contradiction to what the law says.
Well, the stupid thing is that article, if you remember that article that we read out before, you know, one of the statements was that the Parliament must decide whether these laws are unconstitutional or not. That's the court. So they're prepared to accept it in relation to that, but, they're not prepared to accept it when it comes to Culleton.
That's right. But it's now starting to come home to roost, because we've just in the last few days served paperwork on the Parliament to say, hang on, guys. You have an obligation. We can now cite maxims in law and Privy Council cases where they have found this to be the case.
Yeah.
Parliament is strictly bound under the Bill of Rights, 1688, and it even cites that in legislation here in Australia in 1987. Very clear, Section 16, no court has any jurisdiction over a privilege of a Member of Parliament.
Yeah.
And Culleton is well and truly safe within the parliamentary rule. In fact, that the decision of the 1st of December, Motion 163, is rock solid.
Yeah.
No court could deal with any issue of Culleton's, only the House could deal with it, and the House voted on that.
Yeah.
So this is where we're really now exposing this hideous element behind the politicians in our Parliament, and we can only discover who they are on discovery and when the House sits as a court. So, you know, there's a number of remedies to this. We either get a mandamus, an order out of the Supreme Court, the Privy Council over there, that our Senate and our Parliament sort of do the right thing.
Yes.
As if.
Yes.
So, which is why we're going for the option really to push a caretaker government. Yeah. Because it is such a mess here. Our High Court is in such disarray. Yeah. Our Federal Court is an absolute mess. And it flows on down through the line. Yeah. Wherever we challenge the courts, it's only been the last few weeks we've had cases where the courts here in Australia seem to be reacting more to when the questions put to them about, are you a Crown Court? They start saying, oh, yeah, we're a Crown Court. Well, prove it. Prove it,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is the biggest thing for everyone listening in. I mean, obviously this is great news for Culleton. It's great news for the future steps that are to come. But for right now, the fact that those courts have accepted the filing, that you've served the Commonwealth of Australia, that absolutely categorically proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that we still come under the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland.
That's it.
That is it. None of this Australia Act's rubbish has any lawful force or effect. This Queen of Australia does not exist. Everything must go back to the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. And that just opens up a huge can of worms in respect to anything, as you say, the courts, fines, taxes, everything.
But in fact, the elephant in the room, and this is our next sort of ploy, is the land. Here in Australia, all of our freehold titles are grant in fee simple. Under the Crown.
Exactly.
And that's the key.
Yes.
How do we get the lion to fully wake up in England? And it really, we don't expect it will do anything until after the 29th of March.
Yeah.
Because that's when there's a cut-off. So they're going to look for a place.
Yeah.
And we've handed the paperwork up to them to say, look here, guys, please, because now you can stand in honour again if you can be seen to do the right thing. And this is what Nigel Farage has been sort of hammering home in England, because he's got a nightly radio program in London. Yeah. I tried to get to talk to him, but unfortunately, the people that answer the phones, they want to know everything, and what I wanted to talk to him about was a little bit awkward.
Yes.
So they didn't get me to contact with him. But he's really been trying to say we need to reform the Commonwealth. Yeah. Big time. Yeah. And I urge people to listen to his London radio program, and you can hear it online. Yeah. And on YouTube, live, every 6 o'clock London time every night. Yep. And he's just hammering this home. We need to reform the Commonwealth. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's not enough voices in the House of Commons that have been... they've been very sort of sitting on the fence. Yeah. I went to a meeting there in London, just sort of in the square around Westminster Parliament. There was a group called the Bruges Group, that's Bruges. Yeah. And they have guest speakers every fortnight. Yeah. And usually they're members of Parliament, either the House of Lords or the House of Commons. And I went to one of the meetings there, and I went up to those MPs and sort of stated the case about Coulson, and they were sort of like, oh, okay, wow. Well, that sounds very interesting. You'll need to put this in writing. And they said, listen, if you could put it in front of every one of the members, like there's about 250, but it'll then get a voice. Yeah, nice. But, of course, their plate's well and truly full at the moment with Brexit.
All Brexit stuff, yeah.
So, we weren't expecting miracles. But, we touched base. We started a connection with that group, and we've got a guy going over Thursday. Yeah. To sort of pick up where we left off. Yep. And he's going to pop along to the next meeting, which is it's the next fortnight. Yeah. So they're having another bunch of guest speakers. Yeah. It's a very formal group, and they're lovely people. Yeah. A lot of them have a very strong interest in Australia, and when I started talking about what's happening here, they were in shock. Yeah. So they're very interested in what we're saying and what we've learned. Yeah. Because they're looking for a solution. Yeah. And this is part of this group's, and this is what the English people are looking for. They're saying, well, we've got to get something, because the Irish are putting a lot of pressure on the United Kingdom because they don't want anything to do with leaving the EU. Yeah. They want to stay, and it's mainly through trade. So they're now threatening trade barriers between the United Kingdom and Ireland, and the Scottish as well. So, again, like I said earlier, it looks like we've got the Civil War starting up again, only it might be in trade more than anything. But it's all a lot of speculation at the moment. Yeah, well, that's because no one knows. The general public sort of going, well, as far as we're concerned, everything's just going to be tickety-boo. Yeah. The very next day, the 30th of March will be just another day. Yeah. But, and anyone that puts up a restriction, well, there's a law to deal with that. Yeah. So what are you doing, Yeah. Because the EU tie has been very much with respect to free trade. Yeah. And no barriers. So there's already a couple of, I think the vacuum cleaner company, Dyson's, they're moving over to, I think it was France, I'm not sure which,
Okay.
but they're moving out of England because there's going to be higher tariffs put on their stuff, and this is the EU doing this.
Yes, yeah, too.
But since then, and this is just last week, there are now quite a few other countries, because the United Kingdom's not coming, there's no deal coming.
Yes.
They're going, oh, well, the EU's stuffed. We might as well step out as well.
Yeah, well, that'd be brilliant.
And this is what they're afraid of in the EU, which would be terrific if it did.
Yeah, break it, do to them what they do to us, is separate and segregate and bring the whole thing down.
But essentially the beginning of this and this whole movement was Trump. And what Trump has been doing.
Oh, yeah.
He's had a huge influence over there.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
The EU has just been reeling from his punches. And so we've got a lot to thank Trump for doing a lot of this. And this isn't just Trump, it's the people behind Trump.
Yeah.
It's the faces, particularly in the Pentagon, who are just sick and tired of the corruption.
Yeah.
That the old state has been, the deep state's been bringing upon us. So, and the EU, of course, was one of the strong voices.
Yeah.
And of course, behind the EU is Unidroit.
Yeah, that's it.
So, it's all roads to London.
To Rome.